Okay. Awesome. Oh, great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, guys. I had to, it had to save, and so I lost you for a little bit. Continue. Okay. So sorry. Okay. So what I was saying was, mute yourselves, guys. So what I was saying before was, on the wall, we had an ear on the wall, and when we tattled to the teacher, we said to the kid, the teacher would say to the child, you know what? Tell it to the ear. And we would have kindergarten children all day walking over to this picture of the ear on the wall and saying, Johnny hit me and I didn't, and they got it out of their system and they walked away. So who knows? Try that even at home. You know what? Mommy's not going to listen when you tattle, but you can tell it to the ear. Obviously not for older children, but it's just such a funny, cute thing. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Sharon, you
okay, so I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old.
And
my 7-year-old her personality is very like manipulative, I would say. Like she'll kind of twist around the whole thing and get her way. So whenever my 4-year-old comes and tattles, if I tell them like, okay, work it out yourselves, like the 4-year-old will always end up getting like the lower end of the deal, you know? So I always feel bad, which is why I feel like I should step in. But again, I don't want to. So how can I kind of avoid my 7-year-old from taking advantage of my 4-year-old every time?
you might not be able to. What you can say, what you don't want to do it at that moment. In other words, at that moment that something happens, you don't want to step in. You can have conversations with each of them separately. You can say to your 7-year-old, you know, I notice that when you play with, is it a sister, the little one?
Yeah, sisters, okay. 2 sisters.
I noticed that when you play with your sister, sometimes you take advantage of her and you don't always share nicely with her. And then you can talk to your 4-year-old and say, you know, if your sister isn't sharing nicely with you, you don't have to play with her. You can walk away. You don't have to play with her. But I would have that conversation, not when it happens. When it happens, you need to step out of it. And you need to give them ownership of it and give them the power to be able to handle it as best as they can on their own. The reality is a younger child is going to give in more often to an older child simply because they're younger and older. That's just the way it is going to be. And that's how we learn our place in our family. You're not going to be able to always. You're not going to be able to always step out, but I want you to try to hand it to them whenever possible. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Okay. So here, I'm just getting to the point where this is coming up. What if one of your children is always the victim? So what I will say is, if you have an older child who's always picking on the younger child, not necessarily giving them the short end of the stick, but always picking on them, what I like to do is, so to speak, reward the younger child. So let's say I see the older child, again, not being nice to the younger child. I can say to the younger child, come into the kitchen with mommy. I'm going to give you a cookie because I see that you're not enjoying playing with your sister right now. I wouldn't necessarily call the older child out on it, but I definitely would reward the younger child, so the victim gets a reward rather than the aggressor. She hurt you. Let's talk about it over ice cream. So if you give her positive attention, the younger one, or the one that's getting the raw end of the deal, the older one will stop doing mean things because they're not going to want the younger child to always get ice cream or cookies or spending time with mommy because they're not being treated nice. When fighting is serious, okay? Describe what you see. I don't like, you're doing this and you're doing this. Now you have to both go to separate rooms. I'm putting on the timer for 10 minutes and now you can't sit together. I had a story, my cousins, when they were younger, I have two boys. One is about 2 years older than the other one. And my aunt had told me that every day, the older one, they would play in the same room. The younger one would start to cry and say, leave me alone, leave me alone. And she would come into the room and the older one would say, I didn't do anything. And she would punish the older one. She said after a few days, the older one kept saying, but I don't do anything. I don't do anything. She stood outside the door when the younger one was crying and she looked in. And what she saw was that the younger one was sitting in a corner of the room. The older one was in the far end other corner of the room. The younger one was sitting not anywhere near the older one, crying and screaming, leave me alone, leave me alone. So what she realized was she didn't believe the older one and the younger one was manipulating her totally. And so that's why I said before, we don't always know what our kids are being honest about. Never take it at face value. We don't see the initial confrontation. Okay. Okay, so letting children work out their own differences improves them and it teaches them that they can manage on their own. And they'll practice these skills at home and then they'll use them out in the real world. Truthfully, sibling rivalry is a good thing because it teaches our children what is and isn't okay. If it's not okay with my brother, I can't do it out with my friends. I can't bring it into the classroom. So I wanted to talk a minute about sharing a room because this comes up a lot and I'm a big fan. So I think that children should share a room. I think that even if you have the space, I think that there's a lot of give and take. I think they learn to work things out on their own. He's neat, you're messy. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to keep the room the way we both want it to be? I think it teaches them to appreciate each other's company. I remember I actually shared a room with my brother. We used to live in New Jersey and we shared a room. We had a 2-bedroom. It was the only other bedroom. And I was 2 years older than him. When we moved to New York, I was 9. So he was 7 and I was 9. We shared a room till I was 9. And by about age 9, I was ready for privacy. There's no question. But I have to tell you, we used to talk all the time. And we talked differently when we were lying in bed together and sharing our room than when we were playing in the living room. It just was different. It was private. It was just different. And I had the same experience with my own 2 boys. They shared a room and I used to love sitting outside their room at night and listening to them. One would say, my friend wasn't nice to me today. And the other would say, well, if he does that again, this is what you should do. And there was a way they spoke to each other that was just different, sharing the space at night than it was during the day. It also helps them with attachment issues, and it teaches them respect for each other and each other's possessions. And there's just that closeness, that there's an intimacy when you share a room together that I think you don't really have when you don't. It's just a nice thing to do. To me, a sibling is the person who will know you the longest in your life. Our parents, unfortunately, most of our parents will die before we are old. And as we grow and as we get older, our siblings are the people that know us the longest, that maybe know us the best because they knew us when, that share the memories with us that we have no one else to talk to about. And so that in and of itself makes the relationship so special. My father and my uncle actually just passed away. My father and my uncle were best friends. And they were 6 years apart, but they were best friends. And when Eric, my younger son, was born, my uncle called and he said, you don't know it yet, but you just gave Josh the greatest gift of his life. And I have to say that my sons are best friends, just like my father and his brother were. And they are raising their children to be best friends. And there is something so special. Sorry about that, ladies. I don't know what happened. I don't know. I have no idea what just happened. All right. But I'm almost at the end anyway. But I just wanted you to know that being able to raise your children to enjoy each other and like each other and want to be together is one of the greatest gifts that you can give them. And following some of these guidelines really, really will help. So I did have one question that was asked earlier. I'm going to just read the question. How do I keep my younger child from being heartbroken when his older sibling doesn't want him around? So I get that. I get that the older children feel the younger ones are annoying. Again, I'm going to say what I said before. You speak to each child privately and separately, and you let them know that these are the things that you hope will come out of that relationship, and that when you are kind to your sibling, they will be kind to you. You try to help them understand it, because it's hard when they're not at the same level. It's really hard when children start to walk or children start to crawl. The older child starts getting annoyed because they're in their stuff and they're taking their stuff. Younger kids are always running to keep up. They're always dancing as fast as they can and always trying to keep up with their siblings. And it's a hard position to be in. So you speak to them about it and you do the best that you can with it. Any questions? Unmute. If you have questions, unmute yourself and ask me. Okay, no questions. Was this helpful? Someone answer. Are you still there? Okay. I don't know if you guys are still there or not, because I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go.
Yes, definitely.
Hello.
Go ahead. Whoever. Go ahead. Did somebody want to talk?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I have a question. You know how you were saying
I have
the
a question.
older
Okay, I wanted to know you.
child gets the privilege. Yeah.
You're breaking up. Okay. Sharon, you speak. How do we let the older child stay? I'll type my question. Okay. Okay. How do we let the older child stay up later if they're sharing a room? Okay. The answer, it's a great question. And the answer to that is?
I think it's Kobe, Hakimi, and Monica.
I have a question. Can I speak?
Okay. So I got it in the chat. How do we let the older child stay up later if they're sharing a room? It's a great question. And the answer to that is you tell the younger child, since your sister is older than you, she's going to stay up a few minutes later and she'll come in when it's time for her to go to sleep. And that's what you tell her. And it can be 10 minutes, it can be 5 minutes, but that extra 5 or 10 minutes will make a huge difference for the older child. They feel older simply because you're giving them that privilege. Okay, another question. When do you say when one child says, I hate you to, oh, what do you say when one child says, I hate you to their sibling? You don't say anything to them in front of the sibling. You don't come to the sibling's rescue. You speak to the child afterwards, later, when you can speak privately, and you say, there are things we are not allowed to say in this house. We do not tell somebody that we hate them. That is not acceptable. You don't have to like everything that your sibling does, and if you don't like it, you can walk away, but you are not allowed to use those words. And if you use those words again, there will be a consequence. But you don't say it at the moment. At the moment, you let it pass, and then you speak to them privately. Any more questions? Anybody have another question? No? Oh, wait, no? Okay, guys. So I guess this is it. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope that the recording came out, and I hope that we can do this again. Okay? All right, guys, I'm going to end now. Bye.